It's a unique angle to be supporting your journey as a congressional candidate through prop firm trading.
Last year, I was able to more than double my take-home salary through working with 3 different prop firms.
Should elected officials be allowed to trade at all?
Elected officials should not be able to trade when they are in Congress. It happens on both sides of the aisle. We really need to get on top of it. And we really need to get on top of an Oval Office that believes that they can, roll out their own meme coins and take advantage of the American people like that. Micros are the best thing in the world. Scalping 2NQ, you can make your money really, really quickly and wrap up your trading day in less than 30 minutes. I'm just a regular guy. I think we need more regular people in our government who are like me, who, want to make our government work instead of just setting it on fire.
Thanks, Dan, very much for joining me here today. I'm really excited to get to know you a little bit more and ask a few questions about your journey so far. I know this is going to be an interesting one because there's kind of an interesting story between your journey as a trader, but also your run for Congress in Maryland's 1st congressional district. So I'd love to kind of just dive right into your background and your trading journey. I know right now you're running for Congress while you're actively day trading through prop firms, and that's obviously a very unique story here. Can you give me a sense of how you got it started in futures trading and what drew you specifically to the prop firm model?
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Mike, for having me here today. It's really nice to meet you, and it means a lot to be invited to speak with you and have the opportunity to kind of share my story, both with respect to my trading experience and also tell you a little bit why I'm crazy enough to run for Congress these days in such polarized times. But, I wouldn't necessarily sell myself as a professional futures trader, but that's how I've been putting food on the table for my family for some time now. Obviously I was doing the 9 to 5 for years, and I never intended to go full time with trading. I never wanted to rely on that as a main source of income. I think that puts way too much pressure on your average retail trader. So for me, it's always been a little bit more of a side hustle. And it took me a long time to make it a successful side hustle. I beat my head against the wall trying to trade options around the time of the pandemic, and then for a couple of years after that. And I was never very successful for a bunch of different reasons that I could get into. But once I found futures, and once I realized that the prop firm model existed, and that, I didn't have to deal with extremely high margin requirements to trade my own money in my own account, and I didn't have to take the same levels of risk that I was taking funding my own options account and losing a lot of money, quite frankly. Instead, I could test my skills and prove that I knew what I was doing and turn that into 1099 income, which when I was fully employed and never splitting my time, but when I was an analyst, by trade, which is what I've done for 15 years. And I'd love to tell you more about that too.
Yeah.
That kind of gave me the opportunity to always kind of be looking at the financial markets, because that's the area that I worked in. So, it was something easy to kind of plug into from time to time throughout my day, never having to spend my whole day staring at charts, but again, making it a profitable side hustle in, times where I could. And since becoming a congressional candidate, I left my job to be focused on running for Congress full time, because it really does require your full time attention.
Sure.
And my trading, I've made it even a smaller part of my day. I typically kind of tune in at night. I look at the Asian markets, and I've been pretty successful scalping here and there in my free time, which is limited. But right now I am relying on it as a source of income for my family, because I'm not collecting any paychecks and I'm focused on my campaign. And it's, a bit tricky because I'm relying on savings and my wife's income. And we're certainly, we've tightened the belt like everybody else these days. There's so much economic uncertainty out there. But prop firm futures trading for me has been just an incredible thing, where, you can engage with the markets, take less risk, bring money in the door on a regular basis if you're able to follow the rules, which I think working with the one firm I work with right now and really focus on that's very doable. They're a very trader friendly firm, and I've certainly worked with others that aren't. But yeah, long-winded answer there. But I've been doing this for specifically prop futures for maybe 3 years now, and have been profitable for 2 of those years, and have done quite well with it.
That's fantastic, and great to hear that you're, it's a unique angle to be supporting your journey as a congressional candidate through prop firm trading. I'd never heard that story before. That's definitely what sparked my interest in reaching out and getting you interviewed here. But maybe we can back up to earlier in your career. I know you really have more of a background in finance. You said you were an analyst for about 15 years. Can you help us understand the start of your journey there?
Yeah. So, I grew up always interested in public policy, and my parents were often going to Washington, D.C. association meetings for things that they were involved in. They're both in the healthcare space. So I grew up, getting dragged along to their meetings and always thinking that D.C. was a really cool place where a lot of interesting and important work is happening, and different stakeholders having the opportunity to make their case on Capitol Hill and be heard and be represented. And so I made up my mind I wanted to go to school in DC, and I did. And I came out of school in the midst of the financial crisis, or at the tail end of it.
Oh, wow.
And knew I wanted to work in policy, kind of found my way into financial regulatory work for the association that represents all 50 of the state banking departments in Washington. And every state has a state banking commissioner and state bank examiners who work in the department and go out and make sure that banks are following the rules and protecting consumers from harm, and also making sure that the rules are set up in a way that promotes economic development in their local communities. That's something that kind of sets apart the state regulators from the federal regulators, who really just care about their one specific lane. State regulators have to make sure that their states are also open for business. So that gave me a really interesting education on kind of how to balance regulation with financial services. And, you can't over-regulate and make it too hard for companies to do business, because this is America, and we need these states to be able to be open for business. And but we need to balance that with consumer protection. So that was always kind of the focus of my work. And for the past several years, I was helping states coordinate enforcement actions against some of the large payments companies that states regulate under money transmission laws. And that involved, companies like Cash App, who, publicly available information about the shady stuff they were engaged in, and the action that the states took against them right before the inauguration. And then, it also involved going after a lot of these shady crypto companies, because that's an area in which the federal government has still not fully wrapped their hands around how to regulate these companies, how to protect consumers. So the states took the lead there. And so, yeah, that's kind of the perspective through which I'm coming to my candidacy here. And I think it's given me a unique understanding of the interplay between regulations and the markets, and what the Fed is doing, because we would regularly bring the state commissioners up to meet with the Fed Board of Governors. It was really interesting work that I really loved. And I fear right now that the states are doing this work by themselves, given how our current federal government has essentially gotten rid of the federal consumer protection agencies and the civil rights division of the Justice Department. And this is important work that needs to be done. And without it, we have presidential meme coins and a lot of corruption and grift with no one to police it. And that's concerning to me.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree there. It's interesting that you took part in the Cash App action as well. I remember reading about that, but interesting to hear the little bit of the other side of that. So out of curiosity, somewhere along the way, you fell into a trading journey. What brought you into first trading, and what did that look like originally?
I'd always kind of dabbled in the markets, and around the time that Robinhood became a thing, I started just dabbling here and there with equities, and quickly found that I was not going to be a day trader with stocks. And And then I found through blood, sweat, and tears that I wasn't going to day trade options either. And I think the way in which the large banks and investment firms kind of push options on retail traders is unfortunate. And I think especially now with 0 day to expiry options and the fact that anybody can get the ability to trade options in their brokerage account, I think it's really dangerous. And I think, it's similar in a lot of ways to sports betting and just how these sorts of ways in which people can interact with markets, whether it's speculative betting markets or the financial markets, can be really dangerous for people if they don't really understand what it is that they're doing, or they don't understand the risk that they're taking on. And with these 0 day to expiry options, I mean, you can buy them still with an hour or 2 hours left in the day. Right. And the theta is decaying so fast. It's essentially gambling. Obviously, traders will tell you it's not gambling. There's a reason for the trade. But when you're, just taking on so much risk in such a short term with what can be unlimited funds, it's really easy to blow up your accounts. And I've been there, done that. And I think a lot of people have to learn these lessons in a tough way. And some people call it market tuition or whatever. But I think the futures markets, and specifically working with prop firms, is just so much safer. You can still work those bad habits out of your system, but you can do so without losing your own hard-earned cash. And if you blow up a few test accounts, that's not the worst thing in the world. I've certainly blown up many test accounts. I've blown up many funded accounts. But at this point, I'm able to keep funded accounts alive for longer than I ever have. And I've been trading live with Top Step now for a couple months, doing really well. It took me a while to go live with them. And it felt good to get that recognition from the firm that they see that I've been working hard trading with them. And, last year I was able to more than double my take-home salary through working with 3 different prop firms. The year before I did the same thing. And it's just been a really great thing for me and my family.
That's fantastic. So yeah. I hear a similar journey there to my own. I've been at this for a little over 10 years, and the process of winning and losing is always a rewarding but also disastrous and sort of emotional process for all of us. That said, one of the things that appealed to me early on with prop firms is the asymmetry of the risk, right? You being able to outlay $100 or $50 for a prop firm account for a month with the potential of making a payout after a couple of months. Yeah. And the asymmetry of that payoff to the cost is just incredible, right? Mm-hmm. So was it sounds like you had sort of a similar view on it, being able to risk less but potentially make a lot more. Was it prop firm trading that ultimately had you take trading more seriously, and where did that transition start, where you stopped dabbling in the markets and started really taking it seriously?
Well, I think I can't say there was an exact moment in time where I said I was going to spend a lot more time with it, because I think the time just Malcolm Gladwell says you put 10,000 hours into something, you become an expert at it. I think I've probably stared at charts for 20,000, 30,000 hours at this point. So through like osmosis, you kind of really learn what you're doing. And I think a lot of people assume they can just learn quickly through YouTube and stuff. And the resources are there, but it really does take the trial and error and the chart time and the screen time to improve your skills, I think, and develop your own system. But yeah, I think it was, getting funded and realizing that there's some responsibility there to follow rules if you want to do well. And I also have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I like a lot of people have trouble maintaining the lifestyle that we want on my 9-to-5 salary. And now I don't have a 9-to-5 salary at all. So there's pressure there to follow rules and do well if you want to continue to take home consistent payouts.
Sure, sure. So how would you describe your trading style then, with the pressure you have around sort of making sure that you have this constant stream of income? I imagine that risk management is a big part of your approach, but maybe you can explain your setups a little bit further.
Sure. So I'll tell you that if you look at my charts and if you zoom out to like the 4 hour, you might think I'm a little nuts because there's a lot of lines on my charts, and it's all just old levels that I've drawn over time, and I haven't gone back and done too much cleanup. I don't really believe in cleaning up too much. Obviously, if you zoom into shorter time frames, it's not as messy and as crowded. But I think if I had a reason to draw that level on the chart when I was looking at the chart, I'm going to trust my intuition and say there was a reason for that. And so often you watch as the candles come right to your levels, and the market really does respect levels even in this crazy environment that we're in. So I'm a big believer of just drawing levels, drawing trend lines based on what I see on different time frames, validating them as you see them play out on larger time frames, and kind of trading off of those levels and just trusting your levels. So maybe that kind of makes me an intuition trader in some ways, because I don't have really set specific rules around my entries. Sometimes I take a trade right below my level. Sometimes I take it above my level. I'm usually looking for clean breaks or retests of the levels, either up or down. I really like scalping off of momentum that I see in the markets. So a lot of times I take trades around Asia Open. Recently, I've been avoiding, New York market open for the most part, just because I'm not looking at charts at that time of my day at all. I'm either hustling the kids around, getting them to basketball camp, or starting, figuring out what we're going to do with the campaign. So recently, I've just been only available really in the evenings to look at the charts and catch up on what's happened in the markets over the day. And I'll take a couple scalps in Asia and make my money for the day, which doesn't need to be a lot, and get out and lock up my accounts. I really appreciate that Top Step, who I trade with, has some really great risk settings in their platform, which allows you to set, trailing personal daily loss limits, or take profits. And it's really, really helpful for me to lock out my account and just know that I did what I needed to do for the day and I'm done. In the past, I really struggled with over trading, like I think a lot of people do, especially given how, you can get in and out of futures so quickly and easily. So yeah, I would definitely describe myself as a scalper for the most part. I try not to sit in my trades for too long, and I typically take a couple contracts of the NASDAQ, and you know how the NASDAQ will move pretty quickly. So I guess I like to look for the volume and the momentum and get in and pick my moments.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, we've had a couple interviews now of scalpers who primarily trade NQ. Is it just NQ that you're trading, or do you have other assets that you're after?
I primarily trade NQ, but I always look at ES, and I always am looking at a few big names. Apple, Nvidia. I typically look at oil, and I might watch Bitcoin. Gold. Those are kind of the main charts that I have up on my screen at any one time. I also, for a long time, have the one strategy that I really have always followed is called the system. And this guy, Trader B. Jones on X, came up with it years ago, and it's been shared around widely. There's a PDF, which maybe I could share. You could follow up with your folks. And basically it looks at SPX on the 30-minute, and that kind of cuts out the noise from the overnight markets. And then you've got the 10 SMA and the 50 SMA. And you look for crosses above and below. And it's a really good way of determining market direction and just kind of, giving yourself one clean indicator there that that can kind of guide your intraday scalping.
Awesome. That's helpful. We may even give that a test on our show Blueprint, just to see if there's an indicator we can put together for that.
Yeah.
Cool. I appreciate the advice there.
Ask yourself this. Are you making trading harder than it needs to be? If you're trading manually or still coding just to connect to your broker, yeah, it's time to upgrade. TradersPost lets you automate trades using signals from tools like TradingView or TrendSpider or even your own custom setup. It works with brokers like TradeStation, Trade8, Coinbase, and a bunch more. I've been using it myself, and getting started was smooth. The platform's clean, setup's quick, and once it's running, it just works. And when you're ready to scale, adding more strategies, plugging into prop firm accounts, or juggling multiple portfolios, TradersPost handles it. It's built to grow with you. Start your free trial at TradersPost.io. Trade smarter, automate your edge.
So I want to shift gears a little bit onto the public service side of things. Given your background more on the regulatory side of things and having exposure there, I'm kind of curious about your thoughts on the ongoing debate around whether Congress members should be trading stocks. Obviously, as somebody who trades professionally, what's your take on those types of bans? Should elected officials be allowed to trade at all?
I'm really happy that you asked me that question, because it is a part of my platform that elected officials should not be able to trade when they are in Congress. And I believe that that includes trading equity. The real problem is that they're trading equities, individual names, based off of information that they are privy to, and we as retail traders or regular people are not privy to. So I think really that's the key problem, and the area in which you could get the most support behind legislation to specifically stop members of Congress from actively trading individual names. And a lot of them get around it because they say they're doing it through their advisors or whatever, but we have to figure out a way to make sure that members of Congress are not going there and enriching themselves off of inside information, because I think all Americans agree that that is not the purpose of going to Congress. You're there to represent your constituents. You're not there to get rich. You can certainly make money outside of Congress after you've done that. But you shouldn't be there to profit off of information that only you are receiving. But I personally think members of Congress should not be able to trade equities, should not be able to trade options, should certainly not be able to trade crypto or have crypto meme coin related products in their own names, or stable coins in companies that they control or control through their families. And I think it's an open question as to whether that should apply to index futures. But I think we've seen with the way that the administration is able to, quite frankly, manipulate the markets through news and tweets, that there's an argument that it should apply to index futures, because these guys have information that if you knew exactly when Trump was going to make certain tariff announcements and you got in 5 contracts long on ES or NQ, you'd make so much money off of that information. And I don't think that's fair. So if I can get into Congress, you won't see me trading through a prop firm. You won't see me trading, because the focus on being in Congress is to legislate. And I don't think members of Congress, if they're doing their job, I don't think they have time to be taking trades. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've always felt that, certainly we don't want to take away the opportunity to build wealth and to build retirement. But maybe the one exception to all of this is ETFs or mutual funds in a typical retirement account, or even in a cash account, where the influence on that direction is much more difficult. But the influence on the direction of an individual stock, or being able to profit from inside information, seems pretty clear. But if you're in a large index, the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ or something like that, the Qs, that makes sense to me. What are your thoughts on that?
I completely agree. I think, if I'm in Congress, I have a 401k from my old job, and I want to be able to continue to build wealth through that vehicle. And I think as long as you're not engaged in the active management of that vehicle, there's got to be carve outs for reasonable things like that. But as a retail trader, I know the bottom line is these guys should not be making money actively trading while in Congress. It is a real problem, and it happens on both sides of the aisle, and we really need to get on top of it. And and we really need to get on top of Oval Office that, believes that they can, roll out their own meme coins and take advantage of the American people like that through illegal securities, quite frankly. And my fear is there's just no financial police right now at the federal level. No one in the Justice Department, certainly, that's willing to stand up to our meme coin president. And, my congressman, as the chairman of the Freedom Caucus, is the president's loudest and most vocal supporter. And you cannot expect him to be on top of any of the corruption or the grift. You can just expect him to continue to be the president's cheerleader.
I see. Gotcha. Yeah, it's a tough one. I feel like most everybody would agree with you on the idea of limiting the amount of trading that elected officials are allowed to engage in. However, I imagine there's a whole crowd of people out there that are coattail trading on like the Nancy Pelosi portfolio that be like, well, hold on, I'm doing really well with this. So I'd hate to take that away. But it's kind of a double-sided or a double-edged sword, really. There's on one hand, we don't want to see that kind of conflict of interest. On the other hand, if it is allowed, well, then we should all have access to that information as well.
Yeah.
That would be the only way to make it fair.
It is a really good point. And I know there's several ETFs now that mirror congressional trades, and there's Unusual Whales, which spends a lot of time digging into and tracking these members' trades. And there's other private groups out there that are doing the same thing and have members doing that. And so that's really interesting. I think our whole so much of the economy right now, it's like these new sorts of investment products or speculative gambling products or poly market sorts of things. There's just so many different ways to engage with the markets these days, and it's just something that I think is interesting and exciting. But members of Congress should keep their focus on legislating and working on behalf of the American people. Sorry about that. I've got 3 dogs and 2 cats and 2 kids, and there's always things crashing.
Always something happening in the background. Yeah, no worries. And appreciate that you've offered up your home here as the background. If anything, this is something we've all become used to since COVID, is getting to share a small bit of each other's homes as we get on podcasts and Zoom calls and stuff like that. So maybe switching gears a little bit here, given the time prospect that you're kind of up against right now, where you've got limited time during the day and you're still campaigning, you're looking to run and win, obviously. Have you considered systematizing any aspect of your approach? What does automation look like for you?
It's a good question. And I think some of the prop firms are changing their view around algos and stuff. I can't quote you on the exact rules with mine. For a long time, I know they have not allowed algo trading, and I wouldn't be surprised if they still do not. That being said, when I traded in my own accounts a little bit, I experimented with some algos. I traded with one for a little while that I really liked called Apollo Algo. Guy on X that has a really good following built it, and I found it to be helpful and effective, and it kind of mirrored the way that I was approaching my trading and looking for changes in direction or momentum. And yeah, I think if I was trading with my own funds confidently and engage in doing it with a real risk management framework built in, that I would certainly be open to experimenting more there. I just don't have a ton of experience with it. I've kind of always just taken my own trades around my own system.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. And we can speak to the automation and algo side of things here. As you might imagine, at TradersPost, we work with a ton of different prop firms. I think over 23 at this point, and about half of them have publicly stated on their website or in their documentation that they allow bots.
Yeah.
Blue Guardian, Blue Sky, Perdia, the Futures Desk, TopStep, Tradeify, Trade Day, and E8 all allow it. The rest of them, and this is another thing we support on our platform, is account scaling, where you can trade multiple accounts at the same time. Almost every one of the prop firms will support copy trading to some degree or another, if you're allowed to have more than one account.
That's great to hear. And I heard you mention TopStep, and that's really been my main firm for a year and a half now.
Yeah.
And so that's really fantastic to hear that they're, continuing to innovate and work with folks like you who are offering those sorts of additional tools to traders. Because, I think as retail traders, we need more information, and the ability to access that information is out there now. And a lot of people don't know, how to make use of it. So the sorts of trader education that you do and the products and services that you provide, I could see being exceptionally helpful to retail traders like me who, thrive when they have more access to better information.
For sure. And even simple tools, like I find myself often just needing to be able to walk away from my desk. So having certain types of exit indicators that look for volume changes or look for, a break of a trailing ATR, things like that. Anytime I see those events take place, I connect those to our platform as well to exit all of my accounts with the prop firms that I work with. So, it's interesting how we can use these tools to help improve our approach. No question.
Yeah. For sure. I think for me, that would be really helpful, considering I'm not always looking at the charts.
Right. Exactly. Sometimes we need the ability to walk away for a second. Yeah. If you were, maybe kind of circling back to your approach a little bit, since you're more of an intuition trader, do you still have any form of back testing or journaling in your trades in any kind of a structured way?
I've been writing down my trades, as much as I can for years now, and definitely keeping track of my data. And I think, as long as I've been trading on TopStep's platform, their TopStep X platform does a great job with their statistics and allowing you to, see what's working and what's not working. And I really appreciate that. And I know they're working on getting that same setup to apply to their live traders, because right now it's just the stats are not quite all there the same way as in their regular funded accounts.
Interesting to know. Yeah.
Yep. But I think, once they figure that out, it'll just continue to result in that platform being certainly my platform of choice for tracking my statistics and, being able to back test and review my trades when I have time. Although I'll admit I do less of that as time goes on. I'm just really happy to make my money and be able to focus on what I need to focus on, and just have the opportunity, like I said earlier, to trade with a prop firm that's trader friendly. I'll just make a quick note that there are a lot of prop firms out there that are not trader friendly and are set up with rules to make you fail or make it more likely that you will fail, and then using kind of mental tricks to make it more likely that you will pull into your wallet and maybe reset an account for a lot more money than a test would cost. And having been through all of that and dealt with my own, difficulty to I guess I'll just say I'm susceptible to some of those mental tricks and stuff. When you've blown in, you're like, I want to get right back in.
Right.
But I just think traders need to be wary of that, because the prop firm journey can be expensive if you're blowing and cycling through tons and tons of tests and resetting a lot of accounts. And so I'd prefer working with a firm like TopStep now that's put limits in place on how many tests you can buy. And they certainly have never offered the ability to reset an account. You got to take the test again if you mess up. And I think that's how it should be, because I think it risks becoming too much like a pay for play casino if the rules are set up in a really firm friendly way, as opposed to, more trader friendly. So I'll make another plug for TopStep. I just think they're the best in the business right now. And I know this isn't a commercial for them or anything, but they're where I've found the most success as a prop firm futures trader.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. Honestly, I want to tap into that a little bit more. I think there are plenty of listeners here that are interested in what works and what doesn't. The firms out there that are supporting a path to really helping you implement rules that help you stay successful. I think there's a handful of those out there. TopStep seems to be one of them. We get a lot of users on our platform that use TopStep above almost any prop firm on our platform. So it's definitely very popular. I'm kind of curious, beyond the sort of rules and systems that TopStep has implemented, have you created rules for yourself to not only manage risk, but also manage your approach? Do you have rules around like which days you don't trade? Is there a reason you wouldn't take a trade? Things like that. Can you help us?
Yeah, well,
further?
My rules have changed over time and have always been flexible, I think. But generally, I don't like trading on OPEX. I don't trade on. I don't trade around huge financial reports. I
Like
said I like
FOMC days.
momentum and volume, but I've gotten beat up too many times. Probably as an options trader, mostly. And sometimes as a futures trader as well on those big, economic releases or something that Powell said or so. I think in general, I stay away from stuff like that. And I try to trade at times when you can wrap your head around what's happening in the markets. And obviously in this environment, it's really important that you manage risk, because any sort of tweet or, news report, even if it's not a real one, it turns out to be fake, can move the markets. So certainly if you're in any sort of size, you need to be managing the risk. So I really try to, certainly always have a stop in place and never take undue amounts of risk. I don't think people fully understand what it means to be in like 2 or 3 contracts of NQ. That is a huge amount of risk, especially for the size of the test accounts or the size of most people's funded accounts. And so, I really, if my account had less than $10,000 in it, and when it did, you would not see me trading more than 1 contract of NQ. And I would certainly respect a personal daily loss limit, and always have that in place to ensure that your account is going to survive so you can trade another day. It's really important. And it's only once my account hit larger milestones that I felt comfortable taking on incrementally more size. But I'm always paying myself at this point with TopStep. I have daily payouts because I have more than 30 green days. So my account balance does not get huge right now. I've got 40,000 in the account, which is great. But I just took a $20,000 payout. So that's going to drop down to $20,000. And my daily loss limit is set at $3,000, which is probably too much. I've been thinking about dropping it down to $1,500 because I should never lose $3,000 of that account in one day. I certainly have. On the very first day that I got the live account, I took some awful trades and I had a red DLL day. And, you just try to learn from your lessons and get back up on and trade another day. If you didn't have the DLL in place, you could have horrible things go wrong. And I've been there, done that. So that's really my main rule, is to respect your stops and your daily loss limit that you set for yourself.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that. I know for me, the way that I tend to look at these accounts is more from a max loss limit perspective. You don't have a 100K account. You effectively have the size of your max loss limit. And with many of these firms, that's between $2,000 and $3,000. Now, I've had very small futures accounts in the past. There's no way I would trade an NQ contract in a $3,000 account. I tend to trade just the micros alone. And that's the way to think about it. You have to really, really size down and manage that risk really tight. So with your small scalping approach, do you have like kind of fixed risk with each trade that you've attached to the order?
First, I just want to say that micros are the best thing in the world for everyone. And with TopStep X, there's no commissions on trades. So it makes it really easy to trade micros. Some other firms make it harder to to go in and out of micros, or they set, limits that just make it not as worth it. I try to not risk more than $500 per one contract of NQ, I would say. That's kind of my general rule of thumb. Yeah. And you know how quickly NQ can move. So you got to really pick your spots and be willing to respect your losses. And with scalping to NQ, you can, if your spots are ones that you're confident in, you can make your money really, really quickly and wrap up your trading day in less than 30 minutes and go on to focus on what you need to focus on for the rest of your day. And that's really always my goal.
For sure. $20 a point moves fast. So
it does. It does. Yeah.
I'm with you. Well, great. This has been a fantastic interview. I appreciate the opportunity to kind of get a sense of your campaign and what you're up to and how you're managing life as a dad and as a trader and as a candidate on the race at the moment. Is there a way people can get in touch with you and kind of follow your journey from here?
There is, and thanks for asking. So I have my website, which is schwartzforcongress.com. That's SCHWARTZ Congress.com. And if you go to the bottom, you'll see my Instagram and my X and Threads and TikTok and Blue Sky. I mean, there's everything on there. And if you'd like to stay posted on what's happening in my campaign, I'd encourage you to drop your email on my website. We won't spam you with tons of annoying emails, I promise. But I would really encourage you to keep an eye on my race. I think it's going to be an important one to watch this year. And I think, I'm just a normal guy. I'm certainly not a professional politician. Like I said, I've got a wonderful wife, and I've got 2 kids and 3 dogs, and I've got a lot of bills. And I'm just a regular guy. And I think we need more regular people in our government who are like me, who, want to make our government work instead of, quite frankly, just setting it on fire like a lot of these people who are appointed to positions of power want to do these days. Mm-hmm. My 2-year-old and 5-year-old know we need a functioning government, and our government shouldn't be run by bullies. So I think public service is important. I think there's a lot of good we can do for both people and small businesses and retail traders and everybody really. And I want to represent the good people here in this district and actually listen to them and work for them no matter where they are on the political spectrum. Well,
that's fantastic. We'll put your links in the show notes for sure. And I appreciate you saying that. I'm a big believer in being represented by people just like us, that really have a sense of what it's like for the average person out there. So well done on the race. I hope it goes really well for you. And I appreciate everything you're doing. For those that are following you on X, are they going to have the opportunity to kind of follow your trading journey for some time longer as well?
Yeah, certainly. I think you'll see I've been posting less trading content and more political content, and X being a conservative place. That's been interesting. I'm certainly bringing out the bots and stuff. But I'm willing to talk to anybody and engage with anybody on there. And I'll continue to share my trading journey. I won't shy away from that. But like I said, if I can get into Congress, you will not see me trading. You will see me out there working on behalf of the people of Maryland.
Well, you gotta drop your course then right before you get elected.
Yeah. The new Discord channel will exist just until the Democratic primary. No, just kidding.
Exactly.
And beware of these Discord gurus and people out there. These days, it's just not necessary to spend your hard-earned money that way. You're more served, getting information for free on YouTube, putting in the chart time. And if you want to, looking into resources like what you guys offer to help put more information in traders' hands and allow them to make better decisions with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Well, great, Dan. Thank you very much for your time here. And we'll catch up soon. We're definitely going to be keeping an eye on how things go for you.
Thanks so much, Mike. I really appreciate you having me. It was great to be here today.
Cheers, my friend.